Hello, I'm Dr. Ian McCullough of Johns Hopkins University. This lecture will guide you through a practical exercise on calculating centrality measures by hand. There are two learning objectives. The first is to be able to differentiate between the four basic centrality measures. The second is to be able to calculate the centrality measures by hand. Students that are forced to calculate centrality measures by hand are 11 times more likely to understand the difference between the centrality measures up to 3 months past the course. Here is an example network displayed for you to the right. Your task is to calculate the degree, betweenness, and closeness. After you've calculated that, I would like you to attempt to calculate the diameter of the network. The diameter is the longest, shortest path in the network. Think about that for a moment. The longest, shortest path in the network. If you review the work you have done to calculate degree, betweenness, and closeness, you should be able to determine the diameter of the network. I would then like you to take a moment and think about who you would focus on for additional collection about information on this group and why. There is no right answer, but it is an exercise to think about what the centrality measures mean and what they're telling you. If you were in an application focused on terrorism, who would you target for capture and interrogation, and why? Would this be different than the person you would target for information collection, as discussed previously? I would like you to pause this video for a moment to calculate the degree, betweenness, and closeness centrality of the nodes in the network. Now that you have calculated the degree, betweenness, and closeness of the nodes in the network, I would like you to look through your work, look at the betweenness calculation, and see if you can determine what the diameter of the network is. The diameter is the longest, shortest path. It is a number. Given the work that you have done, please answer the two remaining questions on who you would target for information collection and who you would target for capture if this were a terrorist network. Here is the solution to this problem. You'll see that we have an adjacency matrix. Here. We have summed across the rows of the adjacency matrix here. And we have divided by n-1 for the number of possible nodes an agent could be connected to get a scaled degree. Please pause this and make sure that your solution matches what you see here. If it does not, then reconcile where you have made your errors and correct your work. We will now proceed to the next measure, betweenness centrality. What you see here is the enumerated paths in the network, and you see the geodesic or shortest paths in the network. To the right, we then tally the frequency each agent has occurred on the shortest path between others in the network. I will draw your attention to the path from agent 1 to agent 5. Notice there are 3 geodesics. So each geodesic has a different node that occurs on the shortest path, and so each of those get tallied at 0.3. It's actually 0.33333333, but you get my point. Please pause the video to make sure that your solution matches what you see on the screen. We will now proceed. Adding each of the columns, we have the following tallied results. The denominator is the formula 6 minus 1 times 6 minus 2 divided by 2, or 10. That gives us the final betweenness centrality scores that you see here. please take a moment to make sure that your solution matches what is displayed. If not, rewind as necessary to go back and identify your mistake before proceeding to the next centrality calculation. We will now move on to closeness centrality. For closeness centrality, note that this is not an adjacency matrix. An adjacency matrix would only have ones and zeros. This is a distance matrix, which enumerates the number of steps required to get from one agent to another in the network. We have then summed across each of the rows of the network to get the sum column, and we have divided by the number of possible nodes in the network. We then invert that average to get a scaled closeness centrality value as seen here. Please take a moment to ensure that your solution matches that is displayed. We will now continue. We have not discussed eigenvector centrality. Eigenvector centrality is not a measure that we will calculate by hand. It involves understanding how to work with eigenvectors, which may be a level of mathematics beyond what is required for this course. What does eigenvector centrality tell us, however? It has two interpretations. One, it tells me agents who are highly connected to other highly connected individuals. So it's not who you know, but the resources of the people you do know. There's another interpretation. If you're to take a random walk through the network, you will come across nodes in proportion to their eigenvector centrality. There is one bias of eigenvector centrality. If there are two distinct clusters in the network, then eigenvector centrality will tend to only identify the central nodes in a single cluster and not identify central actors in a separate cluster. What do the four measures tell me? Degree is exposure to the network, the opportunity to directly influence. Who do you think would be popular with understanding and having experience with that group? Betweenness centrality is informal power. How often does a node lay on the shortest path? How easy is it for them to broker knowledge and resources across the network? Closeness estimates the time to hear information, its indirect influence, its diffusion processes. We just discussed eigenvector. Additional readings for centrality can be found here. Phil Bonasich has wrote the paper in 1972 that identified eigenvector centrality. Lynn Freeman identified a paper in 1979 that addressed degree, betweenness, and closeness centrality. All of these measures and step-by-step instructions on how to calculate them and example exercises can be found in my textbook by Wiley. Thank you for taking the time to review this short lecture on social network analysis, a practical exercise on centrality. This is Dr. Ian McCullough of Johns Hopkins University.